So there's this little video game franchise. I'm not sure if you've heard of it or anything, but it goes by the name of Pokemon. It was once a franchise of passion, both by its developers and its fan base, but I've given up on it, and here's why. Also, really quick, I'm trying to surpass the very series we'll be talking about today, so feel free to subscribe as we're super close to 400 subscribers, so if you could do that, that'd be much appreciated. Anyways, let's get started. So I just want to address the biggest issue first, and that is the annual releases of games. Now, the biggest problem with this is that these games, because of the fact that they're annually released, sometimes even more so than annual released, is just that these games are so unbelievably rushed. Of course, everybody's aware of all the problems that have been going around the last few games regarding Scarlet and Violet or BDSP. None of this was even a thing back in, I guess, the good old days, quote unquote, of Pokemon. What the word glitch used to mean in terms of the Pokemon games were like secret things you can do, like trying to get a Mew or trying to get, rare mythicals that you couldn't normally get. Like, that's what glitches normally meant in the Pokemon series. But nowadays, it's just things that overall, I wouldn't say ruin the game experience, but definitely tarnish it from being a well-polished game. And that's the biggest problem with it. Truly great experiences don't take less than a year development. And yeah, I'm aware that, they're not developing these games in less than a year and all that jazz. But come on, take Breath of the Wild, for example, or Xenoblade games. There is a huge time difference just because of how much development time. Think about it, right? There has been at minimum 6 years in between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom for the Zelda franchise. That is a lot of time. That's literally over half a decade. And of course, the game's going to be really well, or at least at the very minimum, going to be a well-polished game just because of how much time has been put into these games. And this was somewhat possible during the Sprite eras, but good open world games, which is what they're trying to go for as of late, just don't happen in a year. Of course, it's a whole different kind of can of worms when you're working with sprites and that kind of thing. But come on, to some degree, making a 2D sprite-based game is a lot easier than making, say, Scarlet and Violet, for example. There is no possible way that making Pokemon Gold or Silver or even Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum was harder of a task than making Scarlet and Violet or Legends Arceus, for example. And the reason why that this is all happening is most likely due to the core of the franchise nowadays is just money printing. Their importance is not what they're really trying to make. Here they are. They started out as just, we're here trying to make, quality games, starting out with Pokemon Red and Blue and so on and so forth. And they're just out here trying to make good quality games. But nowadays we need, the Post Malone concert, which, okay, by the way, it's had like the most mid song ever, and congratulations was like, every other word was censored, but I don't want to talk about that mess. And that's what I'm trying to get at here. Okay, this is probably the biggest leap in logic. I'm probably the first person to compare Pokemon to Post Malone, but similar to Post Malone, if you really get what I'm trying to say here, the focus is just like playing it safe without any risk, and I don't know, it just really has bogged them down as of late. And sure, they tried to take risk in the past, but that initially failed. Take Pokemon Black and White and Black and White 2. The entire 5th gen was regarded as one of the worst generations ever just because of how completely different it was, with a huge focus on story and completely getting rid of all the old Pokemon. Now, I wouldn't say getting rid of them. You could still get them in the post game. It wasn't like Dexit where they just said, yeah, you're not going to get any of these Pokemon whatsoever. But with these risks, everybody was just so like, I don't know, like either just didn't like it whatsoever or just wasn't accustomed to the change, and they were like, yeah, we want our old Pokemon back. And because of that, Game Freak has essentially like learned, it's like, well, if we take risks, that means that the people aren't going to like the games, so maybe we should not take risks anymore so we can equally please the fans and make more money, because happy fans are going to equal more money, and that's what our goal is nowadays. There's just like truly a lack of passion for the games that they're making nowadays. And yeah, I guess you can say there's a little bit of a nostalgia factor, because the 5th gen is my personal favorite generation, so obviously there's going to be a little bit of bias, but I'm trying to keep it as unbiased as possible. But you cannot tell me that there is more passion in Scarlet and Violet than there is in Pokemon Black and White. If you take those games, you can just like feel the passion. You can feel the fact that they're trying to make a genuinely good story. It's Pokemon, so it's not going to be something super deep, but to a degree, that's what Black and White kind of was. It kind of was a deep story, and you can just feel the passion in like, the sprite art and the fact that they wanted to have every single Pokemon move as their kind of hats off to the end of the Sprite era going into X and Y. I mean, it just truly was such a revolutionary time, and because of that, there was so much passion in the games that they were making, trying to tell good stories, trying to have good Pokemon designs, trying to have good characters, and all the characters from Gen 5 were overall pretty great, if not overall amazing. Now, to round out this argument, I guess you can say, I do want to put out a few things here. So I would kind of say that I'm at the point where I'm like, oh, Pokemon aren't the same, you know, it's not the same games or anything like that. I'm kind of in that era where what I grew up with essentially and what I loved is now like, oh, this was my childhood, these are the greatest games ever, and everything after that is, you know, just complete garbage, and I don't like it, and I don't want to play it. It's just garbage. Pokemon games aren't the same anymore. But I mean, as of late, I've been trying to keep an open eye on the games surrounding it. I mean, when X and Y came out, I was super excited because, oh my gosh, 3D games and everything after that. I was super excited for ORAS. I was pretty excited for Sun and Moon. Ultra Sun and Moon, I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't entirely excited for, just because of the fact that it just seemed like, wow, it literally is the same game, which I mean, it was, but I mean, before it released, we didn't know that, but I was still trying to keep an open eye, being like, wow, look at all the new content, look at the focus on Necrozma. I mean, there were so many exciting things to look forward to, but nowadays, I'm just really not at that point anymore. And to follow that, I want to say probably the biggest news flash that I guess I can say in this video, I genuinely have not played any of the Switch titles. And the big reason for that is just mainly like the reasons I said before. I mean, Pokemon just doesn't really have that kind of feel for me anymore. I don't look at games like Scarlet and Violet or Sword and Shield and be like, wow, I need this Pokemon game in my hands right now. And I think a little bit of that is just because like, oh, I'm kind of behind. I mean, I didn't get initially, you know, Sword and Shield when it first came out. So I just kind of been falling behind. I mean, okay, in all fairness, I did get Let's Go. I did play through Let's Go Eevee. And I mean, I guess it was fine, you know, it was whatever. It was kind of like a junk food experience where it's like, oh yeah, it's a Pokemon game, I'm having fun, but at the same time, this is probably one of the most unoriginal games ever. I mean, it was literally just Kanto again with just the original 151 Pokemon, with the only Pokemon that weren't the original 151 were, I guess, the Megas and the Alola forms, if you can even count those. But I mean, aside from that, no, I have not played any of the Switch titles, and I don't think I ever will. But overall, in conclusion, I really do want to like these series, as I hold Pokemon dear to me, as do a lot of other people. But if I want to play Pokemon, I'll boot up literally any other game, even if they are somewhat formulaic, like Diamond Pearl or Ruby and Sapphire. I mean, you can even go back in my channel's history to see my coverage of Gen 7 during release, and I still do think that it's a solid generation, just the biggest issues being the slow gameplay and the uncreative sequels that we got with Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. But I mean, none of which were the actual ideas presented, as it was certainly a breath of fresh air for something new. But that's just me. If you think I'm just complaining on how Pokemon isn't the same anymore, like how people were 10 years ago when Black and White came out, then let me know. Or if you agree and think that Pokemon needs to reevaluate itself if it wants to continue down the path it's heading of being like every other soulless franchise, or return to form and be something that truly lives up to Satoshi's initial vision of the franchise. And being big is not the issue. I mean, take Mario for example, who yes has had some hiccups along the way, but it's still remaining full of passion, as Mario games from any generation are argued against as to which is the best game. Take Mario Galaxy versus Mario 64 for example. And this is true with the last big Mario game coming out over 5 years ago with Mario Odyssey. But all in all, these are just my thoughts. There are certainly a lot of other people that do agree with me, and there are some people that I guess don't. I mean, there's people that I guess enjoy Scarlet and Violet, which if that's your cup of tea, I mean, by all means, go ahead and enjoy the new games. But me personally, I just don't have any kind of love for this franchise anymore, if I'm going to be totally honest. Whether you agree or disagree is all up to you. I mean, I'm not going to like, I guess, motivate you to say like, oh, we want Pokemon Black and White 3 or something like that. That's not really what I'm trying to go for here. I'm just trying to, I guess, maybe try to instill a lot more passion and a lot more care, because I mean, the games that we're getting nowadays are just, I mean, objectively not what we got in the past in comparison to, like, you know, with all the glitches and the reception and the rushed annual releases, just all that stuff. But again, that's just me. If you have your own opinions, then definitely let me know down in the comments below, because this is certainly a topic that I would like to hear other people's perspective on. And if you enjoyed, then feel free to leave this video a like and subscribe and all that stuff. And yeah, I guess I'll see you in the next one. Take care.